I started to think a little bit about how I got to where I am today, the journey, the mistakes I've made, the successes, the ups, the downs, and it really made sense to make this video. Whether you're a patient seeking something a little bit more, you're an independent practitioner, whether you're a podiatrist, an acupuncturist, physical therapist, I think it applies. Prior to COVID, I was a corporate stooge. I worked for a large orthopedic group for a time. I worked for a large hospital system, well known. The success that I had there thought was what I had wanted. And it wasn't until there was this really catastrophic experience when COVID came around and I started to reevaluate where I was professionally. And one thing I figured, or that I discovered, was that I was not happy. I was part of a machine that put profit over patient, put profit over good care. Saw nurses being overworked and nursing assistants being overworked if the nurses were lucky enough to have an assistant, and if that assistant was unlucky enough to be on a floor. So I didn't know what I didn't know, and that was a big part of the problem. Then COVID hit. We changed, some for the good, some for the bad, most for the bad. I saw the corporate hospitals stealing patients, which they continue to do now, not having to abide by the same rules that the independent practitioner had to. My practice basically started circling the bowl. So then the bright idea was, I'm going to join another corporate monster. And I did. Big mistake. It was no better. They took what little was left of my practice and ran it into the ground. Now, I take some responsibility for that. Maybe I was looking for an easy, kind of quick solution. And maybe I was interested in pushing the stuff I didn't want to do off on someone else. But I realized that never works. You know, if you don't like managing your practice and you don't like, or if you don't like interacting with people or caring for people, then maybe you have to rethink everything. So I found that through this, again, this kind of like up and down experience, and through the support of my wife and praying, and my children, that there was more to what I was doing than just making money. Now, I'm not going to pretend that making money is not important, because of course it is. I want to pay my bills. I want to take my children on vacation. I want my daughter in dance. I want my other daughter to be able to do things, my sons. But I took an oath, and my oath was to the patient. So then my dilemma was, how do I find a way to balance good patient care, professional fulfillment, personal fulfillment, spiritual fulfillment, and making money? And I know that it wasn't going to be achieved through working for a corporate monster or some private equity firm that was, skimming most of the money. So back to the story, that relationship with that corporate monster did not last. And I wasn't the only doctor that got caught up in, let's say, screwed in that process. We were made promises that just were never kept, which is kind of funny. But that being said, got through it. Then I decided that maybe it would be best if I joined and kind of partnered with a larger practice. And my mind was that, well, if I do that, I'll have the benefit of some infrastructure, camaraderie, resources that I didn't have on my own. So I did that for a while. And then again, that was a mess. People, say one thing and do another. And that was something I always prided myself on. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Now, maybe I get in over my head, but honesty is paramount, and, communication is paramount. So my experience with this larger group was less than good. Let's just leave it at that without, getting too much into it. And then I realized that the only way I was going to have the job or the career or the practice that I wanted is if I created it myself. Now, there's sacrifices that need to be made, and maybe I'm not making $500,000 a year anymore, or maybe I'm ordering toilet paper and I'm managing a small staff and I'm taking the trash out and I spread salt. So maybe I'm doing a lot more, but I'm doing it for me, and ultimately I'm doing it for my patients and I'm doing it for my family. Because at the end of the day, a doctor's only accountable to God, his patients, and his family, and himself, herself. That's where the accountability is. I'm not accountable to some XYZ Acme hospital system or some large institute group that has more overhead than they know what to do with. And the way they deal with that is by paying their doctors 35% of what they bring in, which is horrific. So, and that's a topic for another conversation. But my thought is with this is that how do we break away from corporate medicine? How do we, as a patient, break away from it? As a consumer, break away from it? As a society, we have sacrificed so much of our control for convenience under the ruse that it's better, but that's just not the case. And as a doctor, or any type of practitioner, whether you're an acupuncturist, and that's something we could talk about as well, or if you're a therapist or a physical therapist or a chiropractor even, this kind of applies there as well. Where do we go? What can we do? Because we've been brainwashed to think that, well, we can't do it alone. And if you're alone, you're going to get paid less and you're going to get poorer contracts. The hospital's going to bully you. Your peers, quote unquote, friends, peers, colleagues are going to bully you. Where do we go? How do we do this? Well, I've done it now twice. I did it pre-COVID, and then I made some mistakes, and now I've redone it post-COVID. I've learned a lot, but what I found is not only have I learned a lot, figured out how I can do this, and yeah, I'm not making as much money as I once made. I will. In fact, I think I'll be making more. If you're just going to use monetary gain as your benchmark, I'm going to make more than I ever made at some point. We're close. But more than that, I have control over what I do day to day. I'm accountable, again, to God, my family, my patients, myself. And I have found a level of comfort and satisfaction from that I've never had before. So yeah, my ego, it was pretty cool to be on that hospital staff in the big city and to have that on my resume. And at that point in my career, I thought that was the apex of success, I should say. Anyway, we're learning as we go along. If you have any interest in this, stick with me. I think it's going to be quite a journey, and I think we're going to learn something together. Thank you. I'll see you soon.